Next session, creative user research techniques to foolproof your product market fit. The speaker for the same is Kaustubh Dharkalkar, founder of Potentials and Possibilities. Kaustubh holds a PhD in corporate innovation and design thinking, and he currently consults large corporates on how to enhance their innovation quotient. So over to you, Kaustubh. Welcome.
Thank you, Smita. Thanks, TiE in New Delhi. Thanks, QGLUE for having me over. And the topic, let me share my screen here. Yeah, all right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, many times startups think up of some idea, go to market, and then realize what we're trying to create is not really needed. What went wrong? Somewhere in that customer discovery phase, some things went missing. So that's something that I'm going to talk about. So broadly, the agenda is what should be the mindset while conducting user research. And I will share with you a couple of case studies where some unique research techniques were used. For that, let me start with an example. This goes back to about 2013. Some of my students were trying to do something for speech and hearing impaired people. And, they had given about 15 to 20 days for the research phase. And after the first 4 or 5 days, they came back to me saying that we've been thinking of a lot of ideas, we've been thinking of a lot of concepts, but the moment we Google up, we figure out that this is already done. At which time I said, I think the brief for this period was not to think of ideas. It was about understanding that user segment and trying to identify certain issues which are unsolved, certain problems which have not been solved. So they said, we have picked up quite a tough topic, and the time duration that we have set for ourselves is too less. We can't speak sign language, and these people can't hear what we're saying. So it's very difficult to observe and interact with these people. So we just sat down around a table, 5 of them and me, the sixth person. And I said, let us list down names of the families that we know quite closely in our social circle. Because as Indians, our social circles are quite close-knit, and they extend to at least 40, 50 families. So we had a bunch of about 250 to 280 family names written down in front of us in the next 10 minutes. And then we went through each of the families and figured out that there were 2 people in that bunch of about 1,000, 1,200 names there from those 250 odd families. We noticed that there are 2 ladies who actually fit that bill of being speech and hearing impaired and being housewives. The target that we had chosen was housewives, not working ladies, because we wanted to focus on things that happen in the household. So the next thing that we were planning to do was, let's go and spend some time with these ladies in their houses. So then the question was, when should we go? What time should we go? Ideally, we should study 24/7, but that's not going to be possible in reality. We have to choose the best possible window there because there are going to be constraints. So we decided, there were 2 lines of thought here. One was that we will go when this lady is free and at leisure and we are able to interact with her. And there are some other people in the house who will do the translation for us in sign language. The other spectrum of the thought was, let us go when this lady is extremely busy. Let us go when she's alone so that we really understand the problems that she faces and there is nobody around her to help her while she does stuff, which means the real issues will come out. After a little bit of a discussion, we voted for the second option, that we'll go when this lady is alone, when she's really busy. And we chose a time between about 9:30 to 12 to visit these 2 households. And we also deliberately chose days when the lady's housemaid would be absent. Why did we choose that? Because we wanted to get into a situation where this lady is extremely stretched for time, extremely, because she has no help. So she's really tied up, or she's really facing big problems. That's when we will be able to, the problems will really surface out. And we spent about an hour and a half in one household and a couple of hours in the other household. And the brief to the students was very simple. We will not interact with her. We will not try to help her in any way. Just observe as if you are like, observing like a fly on the wall, so to say. And during these couple of hours in one house and 1.5 hours in the other household, very simple things we noted down. A few things I will tell here. One, when the doorbell would ring, this lady would not be able to hear anything and would not be able to respond. If she put something in the microwave oven and she put the timer, set the timer on, went to some other room to do something else, after the timer timed out, it would keep beeping. This lady would not be able to hear it, and the timer would keep on beeping. The microwave would keep on beeping. Another interesting thing we noted was when she would put something in the pressure cooker, she would not leave the kitchen. She would kind of walk around in the kitchen itself, pace back and forth in the kitchen itself, constantly looking at the pressure cooker. Our interpretation was that she did not want to leave that room, because if she went to another room to do some other activity, she would not be able to count the number of whistles that the pressure cooker has steamed out for. And maybe she was worried about the food getting overcooked. And so with similar observations like these, the students came back to me with a very simple prototype in the next 8 or 10 days. Don't look at the aesthetics here. This is the first 3D printed prototype in my lab way back in 2013. It underwent a lot of aesthetic changes later on. But this was a very simple device that they created. It had a simple Bluetooth module embedded in it, and a similar Bluetooth module embedded in the various appliances in the house, so that they could communicate with each other. Simply put, it would operate like this. If the doorbell rang, the wristband would vibrate on the wrist, and a red colored LED would glow on it. If the microwave timed out, then the wristband would vibrate and a bluish colored LED would glow on it. If the pressure cooker steamed out for the 4th time or the 5th time as programmed, the wristband would vibrate and a bluish green LED would glow on it. Simple product, captures the need, solves the problem. Now, this team was quite excited about taking this idea forward. Now, then we decided, let us take about a couple of weeks to kind of, think about how to take this idea forward. After about 3 to 4 weeks, the team came back to me, so a little depressed, dejected, and they said that we kind of looked around in the ecosystem and have figured out that there are 2 big obstacles of taking this idea forward. One was at that time, way back in 2013, one needed something like 18 or 19 different licenses if one were to manufacture, to set up a manufacturing unit in India. Second was this product was so damn simple that it could be copied easily. They thought about patenting it, utility patent, etc., but you know how the IP laws work in our country or are honored in our country. So they were worried that they would make it, they would launch it. Maybe they manufactured a batch of maybe 1,000 pieces to begin with. They might even be able to sell it. But within the next 4 to 6 months, probably the Chinese would come in and just bulldoze them out of the market with probably half to 1/4 of the price. And they would be left nowhere. So these were 2 real big obstacles that these kids were facing. And credit to these kids, they did not give up. After about 15 to 20 days, they again came back to me saying, we've been thinking about this and we realized the problem is not on the market side, it is on our side. We are unable to manufacture it. So how can we get over this issue? And what they came up with was a brilliant option later, that they said, manufacturing is our problem. Let us forget manufacturing this. Let's not manufacture it at all. Let this become completely open source. That means anybody can manufacture this kind of a wristband with a standard Bluetooth module embedded in it. We will create a cloud platform, which on one side will have an API, application programming interface, which will connect with this wristband. And on the other side, we will give that API to these appliance manufacturers like Siemens and Whirlpool and LG and Samsung, etc., and give them a proposition that if you connect your electronics to our cloud platform through this API, your appliance can communicate with any wristband which is for deaf and mute friendly, speech and hearing impaired people anywhere in the world, which meant that these people gave the proposition to the appliance manufacturers that if you want to call your products speech and hearing impaired friendly, then you just have to hook up to our cloud platform through this simple API at a very, very nominal cost. Now, with this kind of a model, they were able to crack that market open. Firstly, they went from being B2C to B2B. By becoming B2B, they were able to kind of reach out to the globe as the market. They were not spending huge money on marketing, promotion, etc. All that was being done by the appliance manufacturers. And these folks were reaching the same customer, but through a completely different manner. Now, what are the points that I would like to kind of highlight from this? First impression is when you start your first phase of user research, try not to get into that first phase of user research wanting to solve a problem, but get into that phase trying to understand the user in total reality. These folks did not get into that phase having a problem in mind. They were very open to understand what the user is behaving, what the user is interacting with, what is the ecosystem of the user in totality. Because when we start with a problem in mind, our solution also unconsciously is there in mind, and our user research tends to validate whether our idea or solution is right or wrong. And that kind of snips off the openness of the research phase. So that's principle number one. Second, establish last mile user connect. Don't just talk to customers. Spend time in their real settings, understanding the various touch points, decision points. Remember, these folks went to the houses of those ladies, understood them in their context. This was not a typical Google Form survey or a survey in an ENT, ear, nose, throat specialist's clinic, or at some institution where such people get together. This survey, this analysis was done at the user setting in the actual situation, and factor in the extremes. Remember, we went at times when this lady was alone. She had no help. We chose a time when the housemaid also would be absent, which means we kind of went in an extreme situation where this lady had no help and the real issues would come out. So that's when the kind of, the main issues worth solving come out. If we had gone in a situation where this lady had help around, we would not have been able to figure out those real problems. So that's point number three. Identify the relevant stakeholders in the ecosystem, interact with them to understand their issues to create win-win situations. Now, had they just manufactured this wristband by themselves and had not looked at really the ecosystem, they would possibly not have got this idea of this cloud platform, because they went to the appliance manufacturers. They got this thought that at that time in 2013, 2014, a lot of appliance manufacturers around the globe were trying to make their products as inclusive as possible. And that's where they got this idea of this cloud platform. And with a simple API, the appliance manufacturers could claim their product to be speech and hearing impaired friendly. And later on, these kids did not remain restricted to the platform only for speech and hearing impaired people, but they got into the smart home automation business as well. And they were acquired 3 years later by Siemens's home automation division. So these are 4 things that you keep in mind when you enter your user research phase 1. Do not try to solve a problem. Do not have the mindset of trying to solve a problem, but have a mindset of understanding the user in totality. Do not just talk to customers. Be there in the location, at the site, in their setting. Factor in the extremes and look at the ecosystem. Understand their issues. Try to create win-win situations, because when you understand the ecosystem, you will be in a far better position to create your go-to-market strategy, so to say, or create your business model at a later point in time. Let us take another story. Let us now look at some creative user research techniques used here. This is the story of the humble vada pav, Mumbai's favorite street food, going places. You all must be familiar with this chain of franchisees called Goli Vada Pav. Somewhere way back in 2011-12, when they were expanding, we were doing some research with them, some research for them. His question at that time was, when now I'm launching my new outlets, I don't want to launch it only with this particular item. I want to launch with some beverages that I can serve with the vada pav. So his research question was, what can I serve with the vada pav? So obviously he wanted to find out what beverages do people prefer with this vada pav. So we were a bunch of about 11, 12 people, 11 of my students and myself, that is 12 of us. We initially thought, let us do some, focus group discussions, or let us ask people on the streets, what do people prefer after having a hot, spicy vada pav? But then these kinds of surveys and, direct questioning methods don't really bring out the real thing. So what we did at that time was quite unique, quite different. We identified 3 locations across the city of Mumbai to capture 3 different socioeconomic strata. And we set up sampling kiosks where this Goli Vada Pav, it was manned by them. Anybody walking into that kiosk would get a free vada pav to eat under one condition, that after having eaten this hot and spicy item, you have to play a game with us. And the kiosk was divided into 2 sections. At the front, these folks would eat the vada pav, and at the back, we would make them play a very simple game. And what was happening at the back was not visible from the front, and vice versa. At the back, we had set up a very, very simple game. All of you would remember, as kids, we have all played that ring throwing game at, melas or some fairs that we visited, where multiple items would be kept in front of us, and we would be given a bunch of rings, and we would throw those rings. And if you could throw the ring exactly around any item, that item would be available for you to be taken as a prize. We applied the same principle here. We had kept 11 different beverages, carefully chosen, in a semicircle at the back side of the kiosk, in the back, in the gaming section. And we would, after having eaten that hot, spicy vada pav, that person would be given a bunch of 10 rings and told that you can throw the rings at any of these beverages. If you can ring any beverage, you can get to drink it free. And my students were located at these 3 locations, just observing things and noting down as tally marks of who is trying to throw how many rings on which particular beverage, which is the first choice, which is the second choice, which is the third choice, etc., etc., etc. And over about 5-6 days, we captured about 904 footfalls. And when we put all that data together, it became like a weighted average mechanism. We were completely surprised that in the hot month of May 2012 in Mumbai, the most preferred drink came not any cold drink, not chas, not ampana, not kokum sharbat, but it came out to be masala chai, hot piping masala chai. Now, this was completely counterintuitive, but it was the real choice and preference of people wanting what they would want to drink after having had a hot, spicy vada pav. Now, if we had done some typical questionnaire methods or some focus group discussions, I'm sure we would not have got this response. But this was the actual response. So what are the learning points from here? For me, gamifying your user research in interesting ways is the takeaway from there. Why? Because when you make people play a game, their competitive spirit is at the highest and their guards are down, which is not the case when you're doing a survey or an interview also. People have their guards up. They don't want to be, they don't want to get positioned as what they don't want to be perceived as. They give their position, they give their impressions, or they give their comments the way they want you to perceive them. But when you make a person play a game, the sole aim of that individual is to win that game. So the competitive spirit is so high that the guards are down. And that's when the real choices and preferences get expressed. And this is something that as a researcher or as a need finder or an opportunity spotter, you need to be doing. And all startups need to be kind of getting into that kind of a mode. Look how you can kind of gamify that user research, either in the physical space or in the digital space, whatever it is. With that, I will stop. For more such stuff, it's there in my book. It's Logical, published last year. Thank you very much. Thank you, TiE. Thank you, QGLUE, for having me over. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kaustav, for sharing such an inspiring and insightful case study on user research being done in such a creative and effective way. Absolutely love the approach, which kind of challenges our conventional methods of doing the surveys and running questionnaires. Of course, the approach is always going to be driven by the context. I'm sure our audience have tons of takeaways and would be getting ideas to get started on their respective user researches. So good luck to those who are going to try now. And thank you so much again, Kaustav.
Thank you very much. Bye.